Good morning and welcome back to Reading Wikis for You, where we read the wiki articles for you. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Babylon 5 television series. Now, before we get started, I do want to point out this was suggested by one of you viewers. So, if you wonder why I'm always saying drop a comment down below letting me know what you'd like to hear about next, this is exactly why. If you put it in there and it's something that's going to be interesting, I'll get it on the schedule and we'll all learn something. So, with that said, while I'm reading, don't forget, drop a comment down below. But otherwise, let's get started. Babylon 5 is an American space opera television series created by writer and producer J. Michael Straczynski under the Babylonian Productions label, in association with Straczynski's Synthetic Worlds Limited and Warner Brothers Domestic Television. After the successful airing of a test pilot movie on February 22nd, 1993, Babylon 5 The Gathering, Warner Brothers commissioned the series for production in May 1993 as part of its primetime entertainment network. The show premiered in the United States on January 26, 1994, and ran for 5 22-episode seasons. The series follows a human military staff and alien diplomats stationed on a space station, Babylon 5, built in the aftermath of several major interspecies wars as neutral ground for galactic diplomacy and trade. Major plot lines included intra-race intrigue and upheaval, inter-race wars and their aftermaths, and embroilment in a millennial cyclic conflict between ancient races. The human characters in particular become pivotal to the resistance against Earth's descent into totalitarianism. Many episodes focused on the effect of wider events on individual characters. Episodes contained themes such as personal change, loss, oppression, corruption, and redemption. Unusually for American broadcast television at the time of its airing, Babylon 5 was conceived as a novel for television, with a pre-planned 5-year story arc, each episode envisioned as a chapter. Whereas contemporaneous television shows tended to maintain the overall status quo, confining conflicts to individual episodes, Babylon 5 featured story arcs which spanned multiple episodes and 7 even seasons, affecting permanent changes to the series' universe. Tie-in novels, comic books, and short stories were also developed to play a significant canonical part in the overall story. Straczynski announced plans for a reboot of the series in September 2021 in conjunction with Warner Brothers Television. An animated feature-length direct-to-video film, Babylon 5: The Road Home, was released in August 2023. Setting. The main Babylon 5 story arc occurs between the years 2257 and 2262. The show depicts a future where Earth has a unified Earth government and has gained the technology for faster-than-light travel using jump gates, a kind of wormhole technology allowing transport through the alternate dimension of hyperspace. The colonies within the solar system and beyond make up the Earth Alliance, which has established contact with other spacefaring species. 10 years before the series is set, Earth barely escaped destruction by the technologically superior Minbari, who sought revenge after an Earth starship unwittingly killed their leader during first contact, only for them to surrender unexpectedly on the brink of victory. Earth has since established peaceful relationships with them, and the Earth Alliance has become a significant and generally respected power within the galactic community. Among the other species are the imperialist Centauri, the Narn, who only recently gained independence from the Centauri Empire, and the mysterious, powerful Vorlons. Several dozen less powerful species from the League of Non-Aligned Worlds also have diplomatic contact with the major races, including the Drazi, Brakiri, Vri, Markab, and Pakmara. An ancient and secretive race, the Shadows, unknown to humans but documented in many other races' religious texts, malevolently influence events to bring chaos and war among the known species. Among the chaos, the Shadows' cause is a Centauri descent into irredentism and Earth sliding into totalitarianism under President Morgan Clark. The Babylon 5 space station is located in the Epsilon Eridani system, at the fifth Lagrangian point of the fictional planet Epsilon 3 and its moon. It is an O'Neill cylinder 5 miles long and 1/2 to 1 mile in diameter. The station is the last of its line. The first 3 stations were all destroyed during construction, while Babylon 4 was completed but mysteriously vanished shortly after being made operational. It contains living areas which accommodate various alien species, providing differing atmospheres and gravities. Human visitors to the alien sectors are shown using breathing equipment and other measures to tolerate the conditions. Cast. Regular cast. Babylon 5 featured an ensemble cast which changed over the course of the show's run. Michael O'Hare as Commander and later Ambassador Jeffrey Sinclair in Seasons 1 and guest starring in Seasons 2 and 3. The first commander of Babylon 5, later appointed Earth's ambassador to Minbar. Bruce Boxleitner as Captain, later President John Sheridan, Sinclair's replacement on Babylon 5 after his reassignment and a central figure of several prophecies within the Shadow War, becomes president of the newly formed Interstellar Alliance in Season 5. Claudia Christian as Lieutenant Commander, later promoted to Commander, Susan Ivanova, Seasons 1 through 4, and guest in Season 5, second in command of Babylon 5. Jerry Doyle as Michael Garibaldi, Babylon 5 Chief of Security for Seasons 1 through 4, leads the covert intelligence arm of the Interstellar Alliance in Season 5. Mira Furlan as Delenn, the Minbari ambassador to Babylon 5. Born Minbari, she uses a special artifact at the start of the second season to become a Minbari-human hybrid, and later marries Captain Sheridan. Richard Biggs as Dr. Stephen Franklin, Babylon 5's chief medical officer. Andrea Thompson as Talia Winters, Seasons 1 and 2, a commercial Psi-Corps telepath who works aboard the station. Stephen First as Viracoto, a diplomatic aide to Centauri ambassador Londo Mollari. Bill Mumy as Lenier, a diplomatic aide to Minbari ambassador Delenn. Tracy Scoggins as Captain Elizabeth Lockley, Season 5, Babylon 5 station commander following Ivanova's departure and Sheridan's resignation. Jason Carter as Marcus Cole, Seasons 3 and 4, a ranger, one of a group of covert agents who fight against the shadows. Caitlin Brown, Season 1, guest Season 5, and Mary Kay Adams, Season 2, as Natoth, diplomatic aide to Narn ambassador Gakar. Robert Russler as Warren Keffer, Season 2, commander of the Zeta Wing, one of Babylon 5's small fighter wings. Jeff Conway as Zach Allen, guest Season 2, main Season 3 through 5. A sergeant in the Babylon 5 security force, replaces Garibaldi as chief of security by Season 5. Patricia Tallman as Lyta Alexander, original TV movie, guest Seasons 2 and 3, main Seasons 4 and 5. A commercial Psi-Corps telepath who takes over for Talia when she leaves the station. Andrea Katsoulas as Gakar, the Narn ambassador to Babylon 5. Peter Jurassic as Londo Mollari, the Centauri ambassador to Babylon 5. Recurring guests. Wayne Alexander as Lorien, an alien of unknown origin that comes to Sheridan's aid after a critical moment in the Shadow War. Ardwright Chamberlain voice Jeffrey Willerth in the encounter suit as Kosh Naranek, the Vorlon ambassador to Babylon 5. Tim Choate as Zathras, an alien of unknown origins that is central to the disappearance of Babylon 4. Joshua Cox as Lieutenant David Corwin, a technician in Babylon 5's Command and Control Center. David L. Crowley as Officer Lou Welch, a member of the Babylon 5 security staff. Robin Atkin Downs as Byron, a rogue telepath. William Forward as Lord Antono Refa, a colleague of Ambassador Mollari who has his own designs on the Centauri throne. Robert Foxworth as General William Haig, the officer overseeing military operations related to Babylon 5. Denise Gentile as Lise Hampton, a former romantic interest for Michael Garibaldi during his time on the Mars colony. Melissa Gilbert as Anna Sheridan, Captain Sheridan's wife. The first appearance of Anna Sheridan was portrayed by Beth Toussaint in a recorded message. Lenore Kasdorf as a reporter for the Interstellar News Network. Walter Koenig as Alfred Bester, a senior officer of Psi-Corps who considers non-telepaths to be inferior. Wortham Krimmer as Centauri Emperor Cartagia. Damian London as Regent Virini, a member of the Centauri Corps under Emperor Cartagia. Lee McCloskey as Thomas. Marjorie Monahan as Number 1, Tessa Halloran, the leader of the Mars Resistance. Julia Nixon Soul as Catherine Sakai, a commercial explorer and Commander Sinclair's love interest. Jim Norton as Ombuds Wellington, a judge aboard Babylon 5. Norton also played a projection of Gakar's father in Dust to Dust as Dr. Lazaran, a macabre doctor in Confessions and Lamentations. John Shuck as Drawl, younger, Delenn's teacher and friend from Minbar that becomes part of the great machine buried within Epsilon 3. Louis Turenne as Brother Theo, a leader of a group of Roman Catholic monks living aboard Babylon 5. John Vickery as Nerun, a member of the Minbar warrior caste that replaced Delenn on the Grey Council following her transformation. Ed Vosser as Morden, a human agent working for the Shadows. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. as William Edgars, a wealthy businessman who controls much of the economy in the Mars colony. In addition, several other actors filled more than one minor role in the series. Kim Strauss played the Drazi ambassador in 4 episodes, as well as 9 other characters in 10 more episodes. Some actors had difficulty dealing with the application of prosthetics required to play some of the alien characters. The producers therefore used the same group of people, as many as 12, in various mid-level speaking roles, taking full head and body casts from each. The group came to be unofficially known by the production as the Babylon 5 Alien Rep Group. Synopsis. The 5 seasons of the series each correspond to one fictional sequential year in the period, 2258 to 2262. Each season shares its title with an episode that is central to that season's plot. Pilot film, 1993. In the pilot film Babylon 5, The Gathering, the Vorlon ambassador Kosh is nearly killed by an assassin shortly after arriving at the station. Jeffrey Sinclair, the commander of Babylon 5, is named as the prime suspect, but is proven to have been framed. Season 1, Signs Importance, 1994. Commander Sinclair, a hero of the Minbari War, is troubled by his inability to remember events of the war's last day. Though supported by Minbari Ambassador Delenn, who is secretly a member of the Minbari ruling Grey Council, other Minbari remain distrustful of him. The Narn ambassador, Gakar, continually presses for concessions from their former overlords, the Centauri Republic. Centauri ambassador Londo Mollari finds a new ally in the enigmatic Mr. Morden to strike back at the Narn. Meanwhile, xenophobic groups on Earth challenge humanity's tolerance of aliens. This tension culminates in the assassination of Earth's President Santiago, who favored such contact. Season 2, The Coming of the Shadows, 1994-95. Sinclair is transferred to be ambassador to Minbar, and General Haig assigns Captain John Sheridan command of the station. Haig and Sheridan believe now President Clark conspired in Santiago's death, but have no proof. Clark gradually moves Earth in an isolationist direction and takes steps to install a totalitarian government. When the aging Centauri Emperor Turhan dies, Mollari and his ally Lord Rifa install Turhan's unstable nephew Cartagia as emperor and force a war against the Narn. Aided by Mr. Morden's associates, the Shadows, the Centauri decimate the Narn. The war ends with a planetary bombardment of the Narn homeworld, followed by the enslavement of the surviving Narns. Delenn and Vorlon ambassador Kosh request Sheridan's help to fight against their ancient foe, the Shadows. Season 3, Point of No Return, 1995-96. Sheridan and Delenn establish a conspiracy of light to fight the influence of the Shadows. When Clark declares martial law, Sheridan declares Babylon 5's independence from the Earth government. Mollari realizes his deal with Morden has become dangerous but is unable to end it. As the Shadows cause conflict and chaos throughout the galaxy, Sheridan confronts Kosh and successfully convinces the Vorlons to provide military assistance against them. In retaliation for Vorlon intervention, the Shadows assassinate Kosh. Sinclair travels back in time 1,000 years to aid the Minbari in the previous Shadow War, becoming the legendary Minbari religious leader Valen. Sheridan discovers vulnerabilities in the Shadow vessels and learns to predict their objectives, leading to the first major military defeat of the Shadows. Despite Kosh's warning, Sheridan confronts the Shadows on their homeworld, Zadum. He crashes a spacecraft packed with nuclear weapons into the planet, seemingly dying in the explosion. Season 4, No Surrender, No Retreat, 96-97. Sheridan is rescued from Zadum by the mysterious Lorian. With the Shadows in retreat, the Vorlons begin destroying any planet allied with or influenced by the Shadows. Mollari overthrows the Mad Emperor Cartagia with the aid of Gakar in exchange for the liberation of the Narn from Centauri rule. Mollari betrays the Shadows in order to save the Centauri homeworld from the Vorlons. Sheridan realizes the Vorlons and Shadows have used the younger races in a proxy war, and convinces both sides to permanently end their conflict and leave the younger races alone in peace. Sheridan next refocuses on returning democracy to Earth. He forges a new interstellar alliance along with the Minbari, Centauri, and Narn governments. With their help, Sheridan is able to win the Earth Civil War and forces President Clark out of office. Sheridan is forced to resign from the Earth military but is named president of the Interstellar Alliance. Season 5, The Wheel of Fire, 1998. An ex-wife of Sheridan's, Elizabeth Lockley, is assigned to command the station. A group of rogue human telepaths take sanctuary on the station, seeking Sheridan's aid to escape the control of Psycor, the autocratic Earth agency that oversees telepaths. The Interstellar Alliance refuses to grant them a planet of their own, and they are eventually expelled from the station. Meanwhile, the Drakh, former supporters of the Shadows, seek revenge for the Shadows' defeat. They infiltrate the Centauri government and orchestrate attacks against other Alliance members. Mollari attempts to purge the alien manipulation of his government, but is too late. After a devastating attack by Alliance forces on Centauri Prime, Mollari is installed as Emperor, but under Drakh control. He then withdraws the Centauri from the Interstellar Alliance. 20 years later, Sheridan has a last reunion with his friends before leaving to join Lorien and the older races beyond the Rim. Spin-offs and television movies. The original show spawned a multimedia franchise of spin-offs consisting of a miniseries, 5 television movies, 22 novels, 2 tabletop games, a role-playing game and a war game, and various other media such as technical books, comics, and trading cards. Production. Origin. Having worked on a number of television science fiction shows which had regularly gone over budget, Straczynski concluded that a lack of long-term planning was to blame, and set about looking at ways in which a series could be done responsibly. Taking note of the lessons of mainstream television, which brought stories to a centralized location such as a hospital, police station, or law office, he decided that instead of going in search of new worlds, building them anew each week, a fixed space station setting would help keep costs at a reasonable level. A fan of sagas such as the Foundation series, Childhood's End, The Lord of the Rings, Dune, and the Lensman series, Straczynski wondered why no one had done a television series with the same epic sweep, and concurrently with the first idea started developing the concept for a vastly ambitious epic covering massive battles and other universe-changing events. Realizing that both the fixed locale series and the epic could be done in a single series, he began to sketch the initial outline of what would become Babylon 5. Straczynski set 5 goals for Babylon 5. He said that the show would have to be good science fiction. It would also have to be good television, and rarely are science fiction shows both good science fiction and good TV. There's generally one or the other. It would have to do for science fiction television what Hill Street Blues had done for police dramas, by taking an adult approach to the subject. It would have to be reasonably budgeted, and it would have to look unlike anything ever seen before on TV, presenting individual stories against a much broader canvas. He further stressed that his approach was to take science fiction seriously and to build characters for grown-ups to incorporate real science but keep the characters at the center of the story. Some of the staples of television science fiction were also out of the question. The show would have no kids or cute robots. The idea was not to present a perfect utopian future, but one with greed and homelessness, one where characters grow, develop, live, and die, one where not everything was the same at the end of the day's events. Citing Mark Twain as an influence, Straczynski said he wanted the show to be a mirror to the real world and to covertly teach. Following production on Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, Straczynski approached John Copeland and Doug Netter, who had also been involved with Captain Power, and showed him the Bible and pilot script for his show, and both were impressed with his ideas. They were able to secure an order for the pilot from Warner Brothers, who were looking at the time to get programming for a planned broadcast network. Warner Brothers had remained skeptical about the show even after greenlighting the pilot. According to Straczynski, Warner Brothers had 3 main concerns: that American attention spans were too short for a series-long narrative to work, and it would be difficult to sell the show into syndication as the syndicate networks would air the episodes out of order, and that no other science fiction television show outside of Star Trek had gone more than 3 seasons before being canceled. Straczynski had proved out that the syndication fear was incorrect, since syndicate stations told him they show their shows in episode order to track broadcasts for royalties. However, he could not assure Warner Brothers about the attention span or premature cancellation concerns, but still set out to show Warner Brothers they were wrong. Writing. Straczynski wrote 92 of the 110 episodes of Babylon 5, including all 44 episodes in the 3rd and 4th seasons, a feat never before accomplished in American television. Other writers to have contributed scripts to the show include Peter David, Neil Gaiman, Catherine M. Drennan, Lawrence G. DiTilio, D.C. Fontana, and David Gerald. Harlan Ellison, a creative consultant on the show, received story credits for 2 episodes. Each writer was informed of the overarching storyline, enabling the show to be produced consistently under budget. The rules of production were strict. Scripts were written 6 episodes in advance, and changes could not be made once production had started. With not all cast members being hired for every episode of a season, the 5-year plot length caused some planning difficulties. If a critical scene involving an actor not hired for every episode had to be moved, that actor had to be paid for work on an extra episode. It was sometimes necessary to adjust the plot line to accommodate external influences, an example being the trap door that was written for every character. In the event of that actor's unexpected departure from the series, the character could be written out with minimal impact on the storyline. Straczynski stated, "As a writer doing a long-term story, it'd be dangerous and short-sighted for me to construct the story without trapdoors for every single character. That was one of the big risks going into a long-term storyline, which I considered long in advance." This device was eventually used to facilitate the departures of Claudia Christian and Andrea Thompson from the series. Straczynski purposely went light on elements of the 5-year narrative during the first season, as he felt the audience would not be ready for the full narrative at that time. But he still managed to drop in some scenes that would be critical to the future narrative. This also made it challenging for the actors to understand their motivations without knowing where their characters were going. Straczynski said, quote, "I don't want to tell them too much because that risks having them play the result rather than the process," unquote. He recalled that Peter Jurasik had asked him about the context of Londo's premonition, shown partially in Midnight on the Firing Line, of himself and G'Kar choking each other to death, but Straczynski had to be coy about it. The full death scene was shown in context in War Without End Part 2, near the end of the 3rd season. During production of the 4th season, the Primetime Entertainment Network, which Warner Brothers opted to use for Babylon 5, was shut down, leaving the planned 5th season in doubt. Unwilling to shortchange fans of the show, Straczynski began preparing modifications to the 4th season that would allow him to conclude his overall arc should a 5th season not be greenlit, which ultimately became the direction the 4th season took. Straczynski identified 3 primary narrative threads which would require resolution: the Shadow War, Earth's slide into dictatorship, and a series of sub-threads which branched off from those. Estimating they would still take around 27 episodes to resolve without having the season feel rushed, the solution came when TNT Network commissioned 2 Babylon 5 television films. Several hours of material was thus able to be moved into the films, including a 3-episode arc which would deal with the background to the Earth-Minbari War, and a sub-thread which would have set up the sequel series Crusade. Further standalone episodes and plot threads were dropped from Season 4, which could be inserted into Crusade, or the 5th season, were it to be given a green light. The intended series finale, Sleeping in Light, was filmed during Season 4 as a precaution against cancellation. When word came that TNT had picked up Babylon 5, this was moved to the end of Season 5, and were replaced with a newly filmed Season 4 finale, The Destruction of Falling Stars. Costume. Anne Bruce Ayling was costume designer for the show after production designer John Iacovelli suggested her for the position, having previously worked with her on a number of film and theatrical productions. With a variety of costumes required, she compared Babylon 5 to eclectic theater, with fewer rules about period, line, shape, and textures having to be adhered to. Preferring natural materials whenever possible, such as ostrich leather in the Narn body armor, Bruce combined and layered fabrics as diverse as rayon and silk with brocades from the 1930s and 40s to give the clothing the appearance of having evolved within different cultures. With an interest in costume history, she initially worked closely with Straczynski to get a sense of the historical perspective of the major alien races. So I knew that if they were a peaceful people or a warring people, cold climate, etc., and then I would interpret what kind of sensibility that called for. Collaborating with other departments to establish coordinated visual themes for each race, a broad palette of colors was developed with Iacovelli, which he referred to as spicy brights. These warm shades of gray and secondary colors, such as certain blues for the Minbari, would often be included when designing both the costumes and the relevant sets. As the main characters evolved, Bruce referred back to Straczynski and producer John Copeland, who she viewed as surprisingly more accessible to me as advisors than other producers and directors, so the costumes could reflect these changes. Ambassador Londo Mollari's purple coat became dark blue and more tailored, while his waistcoats became less patterned and brightly colored, as Bruce felt Londo has evolved in my mind from a buffoonish character to one who has become more serious and darker. Normally there were 3 changes of costume for the primary actors, one for on set, one for the stunt double, and one on standby in case of coffee spills. For human civilians, garments were generally purchased off the rack and altered in various ways, such as removing lapels from jackets and shirts, while rearranging closures to suggest future fashions. For some of the main female characters, a mode couture approach was taken, as in the suits worn by Talia Winters, which Bruce described as being designed and fitted to within an inch of their life. Costumes for the destitute residents of Down Below would be distressed through a combination of bleaching, sanding, dipping in dye baths, and having stage blood added. Like many of the crew on the show, members of the costume department made on-screen cameos. During the season 4 episode Atonement, the tailors and costume supervisor appeared as the Minbari women fitting Zach Allen for his new uniform as the recently promoted head of security. His complaints and the subsequent stabbing of him with the needle by costume supervisor Kim Hawley was a lighthearted reference to the previous security uniforms, a design carried over from the pilot movie, which was difficult to work with and wear due to the combination of leather and wool. Prosthetic makeup and animatronics. While the original pilot film featured some aliens which were puppets and animatronics, the decision was made early on in the show's production to portray most alien species as humanoid in appearance. Barring isolated appearances, fully computer-generated aliens were discounted as an idea due to the massive rendering power required. Long-term use of puppets and animatronics was also discounted, as Straczynski believed they would not be able to convey real emotion without an actor inside. Visuals. In anticipation of the emerging HD TV standard, rather than the usual 4:3 format, the series was shot in 16:9 with the image cropped to 4:3 for initial television transmissions. It was one of the first television shows to use computer technology in creating visual effects, rather than models and miniatures, primarily out of budgetary concerns. Straczynski estimated that each of their episodes cost $650,000 to make compared to the US $1.5 million cost of each episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. The visual effects were achieved using Amiga-based video toasters at first, and later Pentium, Macintosh, and Alpha-based systems using Lightwave 3D. The effects sequences were designed to simulate Newtonian physics, with particular emphasis on the effects of inertia and on the motion of spacecraft. Foundation Imaging provided the special effects for the plot film, for which it won an Emmy, or pilot film, and the first 3 seasons of the show, led by Ron Thornton. After co-executive producer Douglas Netter and producer John Copeland approached Straczynski with the idea of producing the effects in-house, Straczynski agreed to replace Foundation for seasons 4 and 5 once a new team had been established by Netter Digital, and an equal level of quality was assured, by using similar technology and a number of former Foundation employees. The Emmy-winning alien makeup was provided by Optic Nerve Studios. Music and scoring. Christopher Frank composed and scored the musical soundtrack for all 5 years of the show when Stuart Copeland, who worked on the original telefilm, was unable to return for the first season due to recording and touring commitments. Initially concerned composing for an episodic television show could become annoying because of the repetition, Frank found the evolving characters and story of Babylon 5 afforded him the opportunity to continually take new directions. Given creative freedom by the producers, Frank also orchestrated and mixed all the music, which one reviewer described as having added another dimension of mystery, suspense, and excitement to the show, with an easily distinguishable character that separates Babylon 5 from other sci-fi television entries of the era. With his recording studio in the same building as his home, located in the Hollywood Hills, Frank would attend creative meetings before scoring the 25 minutes or so of music for each episode. Using the acoustic dirt produced by live instruments and the ability to play so well between 2 semitones, and the frequency range, dynamics, and control provided by synthesizers, he described his approach as experimental friendly as possible, without leaving the happy marriage between orchestral and electronic sounds. Using Cubase software through an electronic keyboard, or for more complex pieces a light pen and graphics tablet, he would begin by developing the melodic content around which the ambient components and transitions were added. Using playbacks with digital samples of the appropriate instruments, such as a group of violins, he would decide which tracks to produce electronically or record acoustically. Scores for the acoustic tracks were emailed to his Berlin scoring stage and would require from 4 musicians to the full orchestra, with a maximum of 24 present at any one time. One of 3 conductors would also be required for any score that involved more than 6 musicians. Frank would direct recording sessions via 6-fiber optic digital telephone lines to transmit and receive video, music, and the SMPTE timecode. The final edit and mixing of the tracks would take place in his Los Angeles studio. A total of 24 episode and 3 television film soundtracks were released under Frank's record label, Sonic Image Records, between 1995 and 2001. These contain the musical scores in the same chronological order as they played in the corresponding episodes or television films. 3 compilation albums were also produced containing extensively reorchestrated and remixed musical passages taken from throughout the series to create more elaborate suites. In 2007, his soundtrack for The Lost Tales was released under Vari Sarabande record label. All right. I am not going to read the list of all of the soundtrack releases. All right. Broadcast history. Warner Brothers slotted the show to premiere on its nascent primetime entertainment network as original content from another studio. It was somewhat anomalous in a stable of syndicated content from Warner Brothers and the cause of some friction between Straczynski's company and Warner Brothers. The pilot film The Gathering premiered on February 22, 1993 with strong viewing figures, achieving a 9.7 in the Nielsen's national syndication rankings. The regular series initially aired from January 26, 1994 through November 25, 1998, first on PTEN, then in first-run syndication, debuting with a 6.8 rating, 10 share. Figures dipped in its second week, and while it posted a solid 5.0 rating, 8 share with an increase in several major markets, ratings for the first season continued to fall to a low of 3.4 during reruns. Ratings remained low to middling throughout the first 4 seasons, but Babylon 5 scored well enough with the demographics required to attract the leading national sponsors and saved up to $300,000 per episode by shooting off the studio lot, therefore remaining profitable. The 5th season, which aired on cable network TNT, had ratings about 1% lower than seasons 2 through 4. In the United Kingdom, the show aired every week on Channel 4 without a break, with the result that the last 4 or 5 episodes of the early seasons screened in the UK before the US. Babylon 5 was one of the better rated US television shows on Channel 4 and achieved high audience appreciation indexes, with the season 4 episode Endgame achieving the rare feat of beating the primetime soap operas for first position. Straczynski stated that PTEN only required the show to be profitable for the network to remain in production, and said that while this was the case for its first 4 seasons, on paper it was always losing money. He also remarked in a 2019 interview that in terms of contractual profit definition, the show remained about $30 million in the red on paper, and stated that he had therefore never made any profits on Babylon 5. The entire series cost an estimated $90 million for 110 episodes. Babylon 5 successfully completed its 5-year story arc on November 25, 1998, after 5 seasons and 109 aired episodes. When TNT aired the 110th episode, Sleeping in Light, which had been filmed as the season 4 finale, when Babylon 5 was under the threat of ending production at that point, after a 5th season was assured, a new season 4 finale was used so that Sleeping in Light could remain as the series finale. Remastered version. In November 2020, a remastered version of the show in 4:3 format was released in the iTunes Store and on Amazon Prime Video. This version uses the original negatives for filmed elements and algorithmically upscales the digitally created elements to HD resolution with fewer visual artifacts, for more visually consistent presentation. In January 2021, it was made available for streaming on HBO Max. In February 2023, HBO's license expired and streaming rights were acquired by the free streaming service Tubi. Themes. Throughout its run, Babylon 5 found ways to portray themes relevant to modern historical social issues. It marked several firsts in television science fiction, including the exploration of the political and social landscapes of the first human colonies, their interactions with Earth, and the underlying tensions. Babylon 5 was also one of the first television science fiction shows to denotatively refer to a same-sex relationship. In the show, sexual orientation is as much of an issue as being left-handed or right-handed. Unrequited love is explored as a source of pain for the characters, though not all of the relationships end unhappily. Order versus chaos, authoritarianism versus free will. The clash between order and chaos and the people caught in between plays an important role in Babylon 5. The conflict between 2 unimaginably powerful older races, the Vorlons and the Shadows, is represented as a battle between competing ideologies, each seeking to turn the humans and the other younger races to their beliefs. The Vorlons represent an authoritarian philosophy of unquestioning obedience. Vorlon characters frequently ask, "Who are you?" focusing on identity as a catalyst for shaping personal goals. The intention is not to solicit a correct answer, but to tear down the artifices we construct around ourselves until we're left facing ourselves, not our roles. The Shadows represent another authoritarian philosophy cloaked in a disguise of evolution through fire, of fomenting conflict in order to promote evolutionary progress. Characters affiliated with the Shadows repeatedly ask, "What do you want?" emphasizing personal desire and ambition, using it to shape identity, encouraging conflict between groups who choose to serve their own glory and profit. The representation of order and chaos was informed by the Babylonian myth that the universe was born in the conflict between both. The climax of this conflict comes with the younger races exposing of the Vorlons and the Shadow's true faces, and the rejection of both philosophies, heralding the dawn of a new age without their interference. The notion that the war was about killing your parents is echoed through the portrayal of the civil war between the human colonies and Earth, deliberately dealing in historical and political metaphor with particular emphasis upon McCarthyism and the HUAC. The Earth Alliance becomes increasingly authoritarian, eventually sliding into a dictatorship. The show examines the impositions on civil liberties under the pretext of greater defense against outside threats, which aid its rise, and the self-delusion of a populace which believes its moral superiority will never allow a dictatorship to come to power until it is too late. The successful rebellion led by the Babylon 5 station results in the restoration of a democratic government and true autonomy for Mars and the colonies. War and Peace. The Babylon 5 universe portrays numerous armed conflicts on an interstellar scale, including the Dilgar War, Narn Centauri conflict, Minbari Civil War, Drak War, Interstellar Alliance Centauri War, and the Great Burn. The story begins in the aftermath of a war which brought the human race to the brink of extinction caused by a misunderstanding during a first contact with the Minbari. Babylon 5 is built to foster peace through diplomacy, described as the last best hope for peace, in the opening credits monologue during its first 3 seasons. Wars between separate alien civilizations are featured. The conflict between the Narn and the Centauri is followed from its beginnings as a minor territorial dispute amplified by historical animosity through to its end, in which weapons of mass destruction are employed to subjugate and enslave a planet. The war is an attempt to portray a more sobering kind of conflict than usually seen on science fiction television. Informed by the events of the First Gulf War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Soviet invasion of Prague, the intent was to recreate these moments when the world held its breath, and the emotional core of the conflict was the disbelief that the situation could have occurred at all, and the desperation to find a way to bring it to an end. By the start of the 3rd season, the opening monologue had changed to say that the hope for peace had failed and the Babylon 5 station had become the last best hope for victory, indicating that while peace is ostensibly a laudable goal, it can also mean a capitulation to an enemy intent on committing horrendous acts, and that peace is a byproduct of victory against those who do not want peace. The Shadow War also features prominently in the show, wherein the Shadows work to instigate conflict between other races to promote technological and cultural advancement, opposed by the Vorlons, who are attempting to impose their own authoritarian philosophy of obedience. The gradual discovery of the scheme and the rebellion against it underpin the first 3 seasons, but also as a wider metaphor for competing forces of order and chaos. In that respect, Straczynski stated he presented Earth's descent into a dictatorship as its own Shadow War. In ending the Shadow War before the conclusion of the series, the show is able to more fully explore its aftermath, and it is this war at home which forms the bulk of the remaining 2 seasons. The struggle for independence between Mars and Earth culminates with a civil war between the human colonies, led by the Babylon 5 station, and the home planet. Choosing Mars as both the spark for the Civil War and the staging ground for its dramatic conclusion enabled the viewer to understand the conflict more fully than had it involved an anonymous colony orbiting a distant star. The conflict and the reasons behind it were informed by Nazism, McCarthyism, and the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the destruction of the state also served as partial inspiration for the Minbari Civil War. The post-war landscape has its roots in Reconstruction, the attempt to resolve the issues of the American Civil War after the conflict had ended, and this struggle for survival in a changed world was also informed by works such as Alas, Babylon, a novel dealing with the after effects of a nuclear war on a small American town. The show expresses that the end of these wars is not an end to war itself. Events shown hundreds of years in the show's future tell of wars which will once again bring the human race to the edge of annihilation, demonstrating that humanity will not change, and the best that can be hoped for after it falls is that it climbs a little higher each time until one day, quote, take its place among the stars, teaching those who follow, unquote. Quote, if you look at the long history of human society, religion, whether you describe that as organized, disorganized, or the various degrees of accepted superstition, has always been present, and it will be present 200 years from now. To totally ignore that part of the human equation would be as false and wrong-headed as ignoring the fact that people get mad or passionate or strive for better lives, unquote. J. Michael Straczynski, 1993. Religion. Many of Earth's contemporary religions are shown to still exist, with the main human characters often having religious convictions. Among those specifically identified are the Roman Catholic branch of Christianity, including the Jesuits, Judaism, and the fictional Foundationism, which developed after the first contact with alien races. Alien beliefs in the show range from the Centauri's Bacchanalian-influenced religions, of which there are up to 70 different denominations, to the more pantheistic, as with the Narn and Minbari religions. In the show's third season, a community of Cistercian monks takes up residence on the Babylon 5 station in order to learn what other races call God and to come up to a better understanding of the different religions through study at close quarters. References to both human and alien religion is often subtle and brief, but can also form the main theme of an episode. The first season episode, The Parliament of Dreams, is a conventional showcase for religion, in which each species of the Babylon 5 station has an opportunity to demonstrate its beliefs. Humanities are presented as being numerous and varied, while Passing Through Gethsemane focus on a specific position of Roman Catholic beliefs, as well as concepts of justice, vengeance, and biblical forgiveness. Other treatments have been more contentious, such as the David Gerald scripted Believers, in which alien parents would rather see their son die than undergo a life-saving operation because their religious beliefs forbid it. When religion is an integral part of an episode, various characters express differing viewpoints. In the episode Soul Hunter, where the concept of an immortal soul is touched upon, and whether after death it is destroyed, reincarnated, or simply does not exist, the character arguing the latter, Dr. Stephen Franklin, often appears in the more spiritual storylines as his scientific rationality is used to create dramatic conflict. Undercurrents of religion, such as Buddhism, have been viewed by some in various episode scripts. And while identifying himself as an atheist, Straczynski believes that passages of dialogue can take on distinct meanings to viewers of differing faiths, and that the show ultimately expresses ideas which cross religious boundaries. Addiction. Substance abuse and its impact on human personalities also features in the Babylon 5 storyline. Garibaldi is a relapsing, remitting alcoholic who practices complete abstinence through most of the series until the middle of Season 5, only recovering at the end of the season. Zach Allen, his eventual replacement as Chief of Security, was given a second chance by Garibaldi after overcoming his own addiction to an unspecified drug. Dr. Stephen Franklin develops an addiction to injectable stimulant drugs while trying to cope with the chronic stress and work overload in MedLab, and he takes a leave of absence from his position to recover. Executive Officer Susan Ivanova mentions that her father became an alcoholic after her mother's suicide. Captain Elizabeth Lockley tells Garibaldi that her father was an alcoholic and that she is a recovering alcoholic herself. Influences. Babylon 5 draws on a number of cultural, historical, political, and religious influences to inform and illustrate its characters and storylines. Straczynski has stated that there was no intent to wholly represent any particular period of history or preceding work of fiction, but has acknowledged their influence on the series, inasmuch as it uses similar well-established storytelling structures, such as the hero's journey. There are a number of specific literary references. Several episodes take their titles from the Shakespearean monologues, and at least one character quotes Shakespeare directly. The Psychop, Alfred Bester, was named after the science fiction author of the same name, as his work influenced the autocratic Psi Corps organization the character represents. There are a number of references to the legend of King Arthur, with ships named Excalibur appearing in the main series and the Crusade spin-off, and a character in A Late Delivery from Avalon claiming to possess the sword itself. Straczynski links the incident which sparked the Earth-Minbari War, in which actions are misinterpreted during a tense situation, to a sequence in Le Mort d'Arthur, in which a standoff between two armies turns violent when innocent actions are misinterpreted as hostile. The series also references contemporary and ancient history. The Centauri are in part modeled on the Roman Empire. Emperor Cartagia believes himself to be a god, a deliberate reference to Caligula. His eventual assassination leads to the ascension of Londo and eventually Vir, both unlikely candidates for the throne, similar to Claudius's improbable ascension after Caligula was assassinated. The series also references the novel I, Claudius by Robert Graves, when Cartagia jokes that he has cured a man of his cough after having him beheaded, something also done by Caligula. In the episode In the Shadow of Zahadum, Sheridan ponders Winston Churchill's Coventry dilemma of whether or not to act on covertly gathered intelligence during a war. Lives would be saved, but at the risk of revealing to the enemy that their intentions are known, which may be far more damaging in the long term. The swearing-in of Vice President Morgan Clark invokes the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, being deliberately staged to mirror the scene aboard Air Force One when Lyndon Johnson was sworn in as president. Several episodes have titles referring to biblical and or Christian traditional narratives or texts, such as Passing Through Gethsemane, A Voice in the Wilderness, and the rock cried out, no hiding place, and the latter being a line from the gospel song, There's No Hiding Place Down Here. Use of the internet. The show employed internet marketing to create a buzz among online readers far in advance of the airing of the pilot episode, with Straczynski participating in online communities on Usenet and the Genie and CompuServe systems before the web came together as it exists today. The station's location in grid epsilon at coordinates 470/18/22 was a reference to Genie, grid epsilon equals GE, and the original forum's address on this system's bulletin boards, page 470, category 18, topic 22. Also during this time, Warner Brothers executive Jim Moloshok created and distributed electronic trading cards to help advertise the series. In 1995, Warner Brothers started the official Babylon 5 website on the now-defunct Pathfinder portal. In September 1995, they hired series fan Troy Rutter to take over the site and move it to its own domain name, and to oversee the keyword B5 area on America Online. Reception. In 2004 and 2007, TV Guide ranked Babylon 5 number 13 and number 16 on its list of the top cult shows ever. Awards. I'm not going to read all of the awards. You can see those at the original article, which will be linked down in the description. Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Paramount plagiarism controversy. Straczynski indicated that Paramount Television was aware of his concept as early as 1989, when he attempted to sell the show to the studio and provided them with the series Bible, pilot script, artwork, lengthy character background histories, and plot synopses for 22 or so planned episodes taken from the overall course of the planned series. Paramount declined to produce Babylon 5, but later announced Star Trek Deep Space Nine was in development, 2 months after Warner Brothers announced its plans for Babylon 5. Unlike previous Star Trek shows, Deep Space Nine was based on a space station and had themes similar to those of Babylon 5, which drew some to compare it with Babylon 5. Straczynski stated that even though he was confident that Deep Space Nine showrunners Rick Berman and Michael Piller had not seen the material, he suspected that Paramount executives used his Bible and scripts to steer development of Deep Space Nine. Straczynski and Warner did not file suit against Paramount, largely because he believed it would negatively affect both series. He argued the same when confronted by claims that the lack of legal action was proof that his allegation was unfounded. According to a 2017 interview with Patricia Tallman, there was a legal case and an out-of-court settlement with Paramount. Influence and legacy. Generally viewed as having launched the new era of television CGI visual effects, Babylon 5 received multiple awards during its initial run, including 2 consecutive Hugo Awards for Best Dramatic Presentation, and continues to regularly feature prominently in various polls and listings highlighting top-rated science fiction series. Babylon 5 has been praised for its depth and complexity against a backdrop of contemporary shows which largely lacked long-term consequences, with plots typically being resolved in the course of a single episode, occasionally 2. Straczynski was deeply involved in scriptwriting, writing 92 of 110 teleplays, a greater proportion than some of his contemporaries. Reviewers rated the quality of writing on a widely varying scale, identifying both eloquent soliloquies and dialogue that felt stilted and theatrical. Straczynski has claimed that the multi-year story arc, now a feature of most mainstream televised drama, is the lasting legacy of the series. He stated that both Ronald D. Moore and Damon Lindelof used the 5-year narrative structure of Babylon 5 as blueprints for the respective shows Battlestar Galactica and Lost. He also claims Babylon 5 was the first series to be shot in the 16:9 aspect ratio and used 5.1 channel sound mixes. It was an early example of widespread use of CGI rather than models for space scenes, which allowed for more freedom and larger scale in creating said scenes. While praised at the time due to budgetary and mastering issues, these sequences are considered to have aged poorly. A recurring theme among reviewers is that the series was more than the sum of its parts. While variously criticizing the writing, directing, acting, and effects, particularly by comparison to current television productions, reviewers praised the consistency of plotting over the series' run, transcending the quality of its individual elements. Many retrospectives, while criticizing virtually every individual aspect of the production, have praised the series as a whole for its narrative cohesion and contribution to serialized television. Producer John Copeland said, "You're not really tuning in to watch the visual effects. Instead, people are watching a 2 decades old show because the storytelling does hold up, and you want to spend more time with the characters." DC began publishing Babylon 5 comics in 1994 with stories, initially written by Straczynski, that closely tied in with events of the show, with events in the comics eventually being referenced on screen in the actual television series. The franchise continued to expand into short stories, RPGs, and novels, with the Technomage trilogy of books being the last to be published in 2001, shortly after the spin-off television series Crusade was canceled. Excepting movie rights, which are retained by Straczynski, all production rights for the franchise are owned by Warner Brothers. Media franchise. In November 1994, DC began publishing monthly Babylon 5 comics. A number of short stories and novels were also produced between 1995 and 2001. Additional books were published by the gaming companies Chameleon Eclectic and Mongoose Publishing to support their desktop strategy and role-playing games. 3 TV films were released by TNT in 1998 after funding a 5th season of Babylon 5 following the demise of the Primetime Entertainment Network the previous year. In addition to In the Beginning, Third Space, and The River of Souls, they released a re-edited special edition of the original 1993 TV film The Gathering. In 1999, a 5th TV film was also produced, A Call to Arms, which acted as a pilot movie for the spin-off series Crusade, which TNT canceled after 13 episodes had been filmed. Dell Publishing started publication of a series of Babylon 5 novels in 1995, which were ostensibly considered canon within the TV series continuity, nominally supervised by Straczynski, with later novels in the line being more directly based upon Straczynski's own notes and story outlines. In 1997, Del Rey obtained the publication license from Warner Brothers and proceeded to release a number of original trilogies directly scenarized by Straczynski, as well as novelizations of 3 of the TNT telefilms, In the Beginning, Third Space, and A Call to Arms. All of the Del Rey novels are considered completely canonical within the filmic Babylon 5 universe. In 2000, the Sci-Fi Channel purchased the rights to rerun the Babylon 5 series, and it premiered a new telefilm, The Legend of the Rangers, in 2002, which failed to be picked up as a series. In 2007, the first in a planned anthology of straight-to-DVD short stories entitled The Lost Tales was released by Warner Home Video, but no others were produced due to funding issues. Straczynski announced a Babylon 5 film at the 2014 San Diego Comic-Con, but stated in 2016 that it had been delayed while he completed other productions. In 2018, Straczynski stated that although he possesses the movie rights, he believed that neither a film nor television series revival would happen while Warner Brothers retained the intellectual property for the TV series, believing that Warner Brothers would insist on handling production and that other studios would be hesitant to produce a film without also having the rights to the TV series. Reboot. A reboot of Babylon 5 was announced in September of 2021. It was to be produced by Straczynski through Studio JMS and developed by Warner Brothers Television for the CW, before Warner took the rights back. Direct-to-video animated film. Straczynski revealed in May 2023 that he had been working in secret with Warner Brothers Animation to produce Babylon 5 The Road Home, a full-length animated film. Most of the main surviving cast members voiced their characters in the film, including Boxleitner, Christian, Jurassic, Mumi, Scoggins, and Tallman. Other voice actors replacing roles of those that had died, including Paul Guillet as Zathras and Jeffrey Sinclair, Anthony Hansen as Michael Garibaldi, Mara Junot as reporter and computer voice, Phil Lamar as Dr. Stephen Franklin, Piotr Michael as David Sheridan, Andrew Morgado as Gakar, and Rebecca Reedy as Delenn. The film premiered at Comic-Con in July 2023 and was made available on streaming services and physical media on August 15, 2023. Home media. In July 1995, Warner Home Video began distributing Babylon 5 VHS videotapes under its Beyond Vision label in the UK. Beginning with the original telefilm, The Gathering, these were PAL tapes showing video in the same 4:3 aspect ratio as the initial television broadcasts. By the release of Season 2, tapes included closed captioning of dialogue and Dolby surround sound. Columbia House began distributing NTSC tapes via mail order in 1997, following by repackaged collector's edition and 3-tape box sets in 1999, by which time the original pilot telefilm had been replaced and by the re-edited TNT Special Edition. Additional movie and complete season box sets were also released by Warner Brothers until 2000. Image Entertainment released Babylon 5 Laserdiscs between December 1998 and September 1999. Produced on double-sided 12-inch Pioneer discs, each contained 2 episodes displayed in the 4:3 broadcast aspect ratio, with Dolby Surround audio and closed captioning for the dialogue. Starting with 2 TNT telefilms in the beginning and the re-edited special edition of The Gathering, seasons 1 and 5 were released simultaneously over a 6-month period. Seasons 2 and 4 followed, but with the decision to halt production due to a drop in sales, precipitated by rumors of a pending DVD release, only the first 12 episodes of Season 2 and the first 6 episodes of Season 4 were ultimately released. In November 2001, Warner Home Video began distributing Babylon 5 DVDs with a 2-movie set containing the re-edited TNT special edition of The Gathering and In the Beginning. The telefilms were later individually released in Region 2 in April 2002, though some markets received the original version of The Gathering in identical packaging. DVD box sets of the individual seasons, each containing 6 discs, began being released in October 2002. Each included a printed booklet containing episode summaries, with each disc containing audio options for German, French, and English, plus subtitles in a wider range of languages, including Arabic and Dutch. Video was digitally remastered from higher resolution PAL broadcast masters and displayed in anamorphic widescreen, with remastered and remixed Dolby Digital 5.1 sound. Disc 1 of each set contained an introduction to the season by Straczynski, while Disc 6 included featurettes containing interviews with various production staff, as well as information on the fictional universe and a gag reel. 3 episodes in each season also contained commentary from either Straczynski, members of the main cast, and or the episode director. Since its initial release, a number of repackaged DVD box sets have been produced for various regional markets. With slightly altered cover art, they included no additional content, but the discs were more securely stored in slimline cases rather than the early book format with hard plastic pages used during the original release of the first 3 seasons. All right, here are all the DVD release sets, all the other box sets. I am not going to read all of that. You can see that in the article linked below. On July 19th, 2023, Warner announced that Babylon 5 would be released on Blu-ray on December 5th, 2023 for the show's 30th anniversary. Mastering problems. While the series was in pre-production, studios were looking at ways for their existing shows to make the transition from the standard 4:3 aspect ratio to the widescreen formats that would accompany the next generation of televisions. After visiting Warner Brothers, which was stretching the horizontal interval for an episode of Lois and Clark, producer John Copeland convinced them to allow Babylon 5 to be shot on Super 35mm film stock. The idea being that we would telescene to 4:3 for the original broadcast of the series, but what it also gave us was a negative that had been shot for the new 16:9 widescreen format televisions that we knew were on the horizon. Though the CG scenes and those containing live action combined with digital elements could have been created in a suitable widescreen format, a cost-saving decision was taken to produce them in the 4:3 aspect ratio. When those images were prepared for widescreen release, the top and bottom of the images were simply cropped and the remaining image blown up to match the dimensions of the live action footage, noticeably reducing the image quality. The scenes containing live action ready to be composited with matte painting, CG animation, etc. were delivered on tape already telescene to the 4:3 aspect ratio and contained a high level of grain, which resulted in further image noise being present when enlarged and stretched for widescreen. For the purely live action scenes, rather than using the film negatives, according to Copeland, Warner's had even forgotten that they had those. They used PAL versions and converted them to NTSC for the US market. They actually didn't go back and retransfer the shows. With the resulting aliasing and progressive scan transfer of the video to DVD, this has created a number of visual flaws throughout the widescreen release. In particular, quality has been noted to drop significantly in composite shots. In 2020, a new remastered version was created, as detailed above, which restored the original picture quality and repaired the damage to the CGI scenes, although this also involved reverting to the original 4:3 aspect ratio. The negatives were scanned at Ultra HD quality and then down converted to HD, and upscaling programs were used to enhance the CGI and to HD at the same time. All right, see also Babylon 5, the franchise, Babylon 5's use of the internet, The Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5, and rec.arts.sf.tv.babylon5.moderated. Anyways, that is the article for Babylon 5. Did you watch that show? I remember, because of how it was broadcast for me locally, I saw some of the episodes. I missed a lot of them. Didn't really pay attention. So I'll be honest, I've never actually seen it. But one of you viewers did request to see this. So after reading it, I might go back and watch it myself. But let me know down in the comments. What do you think? Did you watch the show? Did you like it? Would you watch it again? Are you going to watch the reboot? I don't know. Let me know. We'd love to hear from you. But regardless, thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.